A new chapter begins by introducing the royal court wizards of the Kingdom of Rhodesia. These elite mages are sworn to fight and die for their kingdom, shown here casting a massive spell against a fearsome dragon. Bleeding hands reach for a blinding light, symbolizing their ultimate sacrifice. This noble rank is bestowed only upon the proudest and most powerful wizards. The court wizards are celebrated as heroes, parading through a cheering crowd on horseback. A young, aspiring mage in a green dress waves with wide-eyed admiration, dreaming of one day joining their ranks. The path is difficult as countless candidates are shown taking a rigorous written exam. The practical test involves conjuring a complex, glowing red magic circle. A smug, white-haired mage effortlessly summons a ball of fire, impressing and intimidating his peers. But even in this elite selection, the prodigy is suddenly stunned by an unexpected display of power. He and the other candidates are thrown to the ground, mouths agape in shock and terror. An immense magic circle fills the chamber as one hand conjures an overwhelming pillar of fire. The source is an extraordinary girl who passed the exam at just 10 years old, standing amidst the inferno she created. A close-up reveals her confident, determined purple eye. With a clench of her fist, she unleashes a fiery blast that completely engulfs a monstrous bird-like creature. The young girl unleashes a devastating torrent of fire, showcasing her incredible power. The narrator confirms that when it came to wielding flames, her prowess was unmatched. The scene shifts to a peaceful-looking house in the woods, now being approached by monstrous, snarling wolves. Now older, the red-haired woman calmly cracks her knuckles, annoyed by the intrusion. She glares as two of the wolves charge, thinking how they are wrecking her territory. Her fist ignites as she roars, "Don't mess with me," and prepares to unleash her fiery wrath. The scene transitions to a tranquil landscape of forests and mountains, signaling a shift in time and place. The story moves to the grand royal castle, its towering spires reaching into the sky. Inside the throne room, the red-haired woman approaches the king, seated on his throne. The monarch is identified as the weary-looking King Brown Virginia. The woman looks him in the eye and makes a shocking declaration, "I'm quitting." King Brown sighs, realizing from experience that it's pointless to try and stop her. She reminds him of her stubbornness, revealing their close bond by calling him one of her foster parents. Looking pained, the king asks her one last time for her reasons. She explodes in frustration, grabbing her head and screaming that the reason is simple. She doesn't want to work anymore. Getting in his face, she yells about being forced to work countless consecutive shifts while he insists her quitting would be a problem. She angrily recalls one of her many tedious duties, serving as a bodyguard on VIP protection detail. The montage reveals her endless tasks, monster extermination, magical research, leading to a complete burnout as she screams about having too much to do. She complains that her last day off was 2 months ago and was cut short by an emergency, labeling the job a toxic workplace. The king tries to lighten the mood with a wink, teasingly calling her a continuous duty wizard. Unamused, she summons a threatening ball of fire in her hand, forcing the king to quickly claim he was kidding. She defiantly declares she's been saving money for this moment and is absolutely never working again. The king pleads his case, sadly admitting he relies on her because she's the most talented wizard in the entire country. He then mentions another powerful wizard who went abroad for VIP protection and hasn't been heard from since. Annoyed, she thinks of her drunken, womanizing master, a special class court wizard named Eldrius. A flashback shows Eldrius lazing about while she works, reinforcing her belief that he is problematic and would never work as hard as she does. Back in the present, her rage intensifies, causing her to radiate so much heat that the king recoils, shouting in pain. The flustered king tries to steer the conversation back on track. She takes off her court wizard medallion and tosses it to the king, officially resigning. She declares her duties finished, stating that the younger wizards can take over from now on. The king points out that she's only 18 herself, but she furiously tells him she doesn't care what happens after she leaves. In a panic, the king worries about her future, asking where she's going to live. She reassures him, revealing she built a house in the frontier region, which shocks the king, who knows it's crawling with monsters. Wreathed in flames, she smiles confidently, asking if he truly believes those monsters are any match for her. Defeated, the king wipes a tear from his eye, sighing as he finally accepts her decision. A red-haired girl with purple eyes glances back, a star-shaped pendant swinging before her. A gray-haired official offers severance pay, but the girl's voice cuts him off, flatly refusing it. The red-haired girl, explains she's already wealthy and suggests donating the considerable sum to an orphanage. While the official looks on, she daydreams of a simple, happy farm life, her eyes sparkling with joy. Waving a cheerful goodbye, she leaves the stunned, speechless official behind. The scene shifts to a crowded street, where a blonde-haired man watches solemnly from the shadows. He watches the red-haired girl, now named Rose, pass by with a sack, thinking of her as his beloved. The blonde man, a special class adventurer known as the Golden Sword Saint, resolves to pursue her. Meanwhile, Rose smiles, finally free after stepping down from her position as court wizard. But her peaceful retirement was not to be. In a flash of fury, Rose unleashes a powerful fire spell she calls Red Lotus. She bravely shields two terrified children from a massive, monstrous beast made of flames. With fierce determination, she summons a blade of fire, announcing her second bloom attack. The children watch in awe as she brings her foot down upon the now defeated, flaming creature. The young, blue-haired boy stammers, asking the mysterious woman who she is. She introduces herself simply as Rose, a witch now working in the frontier land. The scene transitions to the bustling central district of Verdisia Castletown. A sudden boom. Rose makes a dramatic entrance, landing in the middle of the crowd and creating a pillar of light. The townspeople's initial shock quickly turns into waves of joyous recognition and welcoming smiles. The crowd swarms Rose with gifts of meat and magic books, and she laughs, asking for one at a time. Flustered by the attention, Rose tries to figure out where to start. She decides on her first priority, vegetables, and the friendly townsfolk guide her. At a market stall, a vendor asks what she needs while Rose considers her shopping list. A bright smile lights up her face as she makes her decision. She begins gathering supplies, starting with large wooden crates and sacks. Standing before her haul, Rose confidently declares that this should be enough for a while. She prepares to use magic on her sack of goods, murmuring, "All right," with a determined cry of, "Here we go!" She channels her power into the bag. A brilliant flash of magic erupts from the sack. Rose proudly presents her now magically enlarged bag, filled with all her supplies. Humming happily, she leaves the town, glad she won't need to return for a while. Propelled by red magic, Rose soars over the forest, spotting her new home below with a happy, "Ah!" She touches down gracefully in the grassy clearing. Smiling, she admires the excellent craftsmanship of her new house, a gift from the Verdisia kingdom. She stands before the large, beautiful manor that is now her home on the frontier. A warning from King Brown is recalled. The frontier is a dangerous zone overrun with monstrous wolves. Rose activates a protective barrier around the house and throws open the doors with a loud bam. With open arms and a joyful shout, she declares the beginning of her peaceful, slow life. She collapses onto the floor inside, sighing in pure bliss. Lying on her back, she marvels at the floors, made from the finest wood. She then leaps up, celebrating the sun-drenched terrace with outstretched arms. Exploring further, she's delighted to find a spacious basement with room for herb preparation. She even discovers a guest room, meaning people can come to visit. With a happy thump, she flops face down onto the luxurious bed. She snuggles into the premium mattress, which is infused with magic stones to accelerate mana recovery. The next morning, rain falls gently outside her new home. Inside, Rose is still sleeping soundly and peacefully. A sudden jolt. She shoots up in bed, panicking that she's overslept. She sits in her massive bed for a moment, silent and bewildered. A slow, relieved smile spreads across her face as she remembers she has nowhere to be. Humming a cheerful tune, Rose strolls through the sunny woods with her basket. She smiles blissfully, relishing the slow life and the simple pleasure of gathering herbs. Kneeling in the grass, she carefully picks a sprig, planning to make potions later. A sudden, violent tremor shatters the peace, her expression instantly turning to alarm. Rumble. The ground shakes violently, throwing Rose off her feet. Realizing the disturbance came from her home, she launches into the sky on a pillar of fire. She lands abruptly, her face frozen in shock at the scene before her. Staring at the massive crater where her new house once stood, she wonders what could have happened. A low growl echoes from the rubble, and Rose immediately tenses for battle. A colossal armored beast with glowing red eyes emerges from the ruins, roaring furiously. As the monster lets out a deafening roar, Rose's eyes narrow with hardened resolve. The beast lunges forward, intent on crushing her. Facing the monster, Rose stands her ground, declaring she is completely... Her fist ignites with crimson energy as she furiously vows, "I won't forgive you." Wham! She unleashes a devastating, fire-wreathed punch directly into the beast's jaw. Her fiery assault continues as she sends the monster reeling with a powerful uppercut. Her purple eyes burn with focused rage as she channels her immense power. A direct hit to the creature's head causes a fiery explosion, sending it flying. The beast crashes into the remains of her house with a tremendous thud. With a confident smirk, Rose coolly assesses the aftermath of her powerful attack. The beast lets out an agonized cry of, "Ugh!" She lands gracefully, noting that her monstrous opponent is not quite finished yet. Roaring its name, Gugashi, the beast rises again, preparing to strike back with renewed fury. With a knowing smile, Rose raises a finger to her lips and calmly whispers, "Bloom." A beautiful rose made of pure flame materializes in the palm of her hand. She unleashes her original magic, Flame Blossom, sending the fiery projectile at the beast. Her signature spell incinerates the target, leaving only beautiful, petal-like sparks in its wake. For this reason, she became known throughout the land as the Crimson Gardener. Surveying the utter destruction, she sighs, wondering how she'll cover the massive moving expenses. She examines her hand, noticing a faint, cracking golden light forming around it. She considers that sacred magic is semi-permanent, unlike her own, and wonders if it was a construction error. Entering the wreckage, she steps into what remains of her lavish guest room. She finds her premium, mana-recovering mattress torn to shreds. Staring out at the night sky, she realizes she can't return to the capital and must stay here. A single tear falls as she bids a sad farewell to her beloved premium mattress. Her basket of freshly picked herbs tumbles to the ground. With a menacing aura, she declares that sorting herbs is the perfect work for when she's feeling down. She resolves to keep busy by purifying the groundwater with her magic. Morning sun rises over the quiet, damaged home. After pulling an all-nighter, Rose yawns, surrounded by a sea of freshly brewed potions. Exhausted, she wearily makes her way up the stairs. She stands outside, hands on her hips, taking in the morning air. A loud rattle sounds as she smiles brightly, proclaiming it a lovely morning. Her smile fades as she takes in the sight of her ruined home, and she lets out a forced laugh. Her laughter quickly turns to a deep sigh of despair as she hangs her head. Resigned to her fate, she decides she might as well make breakfast. Her expression hardens with new resolve as she turns away from the house. She gazes intently down a path leading away into the nearby forest. As she stands there, a mysterious figure in a blue cloak approaches from behind. The cloaked stranger stops silently on the path, just a short distance from her. A close-up reveals the figure's blonde hair and the golden hilt of a sword. It's the Golden Sword Saint. A magnificent golden sword hums with a brilliant, sacred light. The red-haired woman, Rose, senses a presence and turns with a questioning look. An armored foot steps firmly onto the grassy field, signaling an arrival. Rose's distinctive platform boots stand on the lawn in front of her new home. Rose stands with her arms crossed, unimpressed by a mysterious man in a blue cloak. The man dramatically reveals himself to be a handsome, blonde-haired warrior with a dazzling smile. He kneels before her, grandly declaring her his fiancée and beloved Rose. Taking her hand, he sweetly invites her to a flower garden to rekindle their memories. Pow! Rose cuts his romantic speech short with a powerful punch to the face. The man complains about his beautiful face being ruined, but Rose coldly tells him that would be perfect. Undeterred, he once again takes her hand and repeats his invitation to the flower garden. She responds with another vicious punch, showing she's had enough of his antics. Rose demands to know why a special-class adventurer like him is really here. The blonde man smoothly insists he didn't come all this way just to say something ridiculous. Skeptical, Rose questions him, and he chuckles, admitting he's not entirely without purpose for his visit. He dramatically claims he came to start a happy married life with her, but she's surrounded by flames, as she calls him out, for just showing up on a whim. Turning her back, Rose calls him lazy, but he explains adventurers have the freedom to choose their work. Rose pauses, her expression serious as she considers his words. He asks if she's picking a fight, but she coolly reminds him that he's no longer a court mage. The blonde man offers a gentle smile, which Rose meets with a stern, unimpressed glare. Dismissing him, Rose walks away, but he calls after her, saying something has been bothering him. Her house stands before them, its walls covered in ominous cracks. The blonde man reveals her house was destroyed by a giant bear, causing Rose to erupt in a furious inferno. He strokes his chin, a thoughtful and slightly mischievous look on his face. Rose asks about a test slash, and he cheerfully admits he struck her house with his magic sword to test its barrier. Her face darkens with pure, unadulterated rage, her eyes glowing with menace. She realizes he had a cleric erect a protective barrier, just to immediately shatter it with his sword for a test. He confirms her suspicion with a bright, innocent smile, as if he'd done nothing wrong. Enraged, Rose unleashes her fiery wrath, screaming that it's all his fault while he panics and apologizes. Later, the man picks up a large hammer, ready to begin repairs. Now in a simpler outfit, he sighs, begrudgingly preparing to fix the damage he caused. Rose catches him muttering, and he nervously denies saying anything, brandishing the hammer in defense. Exasperated, Rose simply sighs at his childish behavior. Lounging inside, Rose states that with the house damaged, she can't risk going out. The blonde man calls out to her as she reads a book, getting her attention. He proposes that since the barrier is gone, they should get married so he can protect her. But Rose is unmoved. Dejected, he sits outside, lamenting her hurtful silence as she continues to read without a word. Looking up from her book, she calmly reminds him, "I like you." His spirits instantly lifted, he dashes back towards her with renewed hope. Leaning in close, the blonde man softly asks if she's feeling embarrassed by her confession. Rose clarifies that she's just confused, while he insists she should have trusted his feelings by now. He gazes at her warmly over her book, their faces close as the air sparkles around them. The story flashes back to 6 years, 3 months, and 4 days ago, showing hands tightly gripping a sword. A younger, bloodied version of the blonde man stands with 2 companions, surrounded by a pack of vicious wolves. Identified as a 14-year-old Class 3 adventurer named Alf, he grimly realizes their situation is dire. His exhausted, armored companion looks on with weary desperation. As his comrades falter, Alf decides to act as a decoy so they can escape and signal for help. His partner argues against leaving a kid behind, but Alf insists it's their only chance for survival. With grim determination, Alf grips his sword, vowing to draw the wolves away and create an opening. He lunges forward, charging headfirst into the hungry pack of monsters. In a flashback, the young, blonde-haired man flees as a wolf-like monster attacks his fallen comrade. An injured man in a purple cloak helps an armored soldier, remarking on the other's strength and urging a retreat to the capital. The young, blonde man pants, his face bloodied and sweaty as he fights for his life. Facing a menacing gray wolf, the injured young man leans on his sword, realizing the situation is dire. His strength fails, and he collapses to the ground, his body battered and bruised. Despairing, he laments that his dream of becoming a court knight is impossible now, as a voice calls out his name, Alf. In another memory, fellow trainees discuss Alf's failure in the knight exam, with one mockingly offering to get him a recommendation. 2 of his peers sarcastically praise the knighthood's ideal of protecting the weak, as a fist clenches in anger. A younger, hooded Alf naively thanks his comrades, misinterpreting their taunts as genuine encouragement. Beaming with misplaced gratitude, Alf feels lucky to have such kind friends cheering him on. He turns away, vowing to become an adventurer and join the court knights through his own strength. A more mature and confident Alf stands resolutely, his past determination shaping his present self. Clang! The flashback returns to the battle as his sword falls from his grasp. Defiantly, the young Alf refuses to give up, determined not to fall in such a desolate place. The monstrous gray wolf snarls, its stitched-up face a mask of feral rage. With renewed resolve, Alf struggles to his feet, screaming that he cannot afford to lose. He charges forward, but the wolf effortlessly catches his sword in its massive jaws. A brutal blow sends Alf reeling backward, the impact knocking the air from his lungs. He lands hard on his knees, clutching his bleeding side as he gasps in pain. Despite his injuries, he reaches for his sword, determined to continue the fight. Just as he kneels in despair, the red-haired Rose appears before him amidst a flurry of red petals. Rose calmly raises a single finger, a bright spark of fire glowing at its tip. She unleashes a magnificent, flower-shaped spell, Flame Gloriosa, that engulfs the area in a fiery spectacle. The young Alf kneels amidst the smoldering aftermath, his sword lying forgotten beside him. Startled by her question, asking if he's okay, he looks up, his eyes wide with shock and awe. Rose stands calmly before him, her power evident in the lingering heat of her spell. The memory fades, and in the present, the Golden Sword Saint smiles softly. He listens as Rose, lounging with a book, teases him about his past naivete. He affirms he stayed true to his code. Rose chides him for stopping the repair work, and he casually agrees. She gives him a stern look, commenting on his harshness and revealing the monster he fought was a Class 2 berserk wolf. He flashes back to the desperate battle, recalling his duty to protect his team from a superior foe. Rose listens to his story, covering her face with her book as she contemplates his words. Now wearing a white cloak, she wonders aloud if her own life might have been different. The Golden Sword Saint interrupts her thoughts, announcing that all the repairs are finished. Peeking out from under her book, Rose looks at him with a single, curious eye. He thanks her for her work, and she seems genuinely surprised to hear him show appreciation. Rose compliments his craftsmanship and asks where he learned it, to which he replies it was from his, quote, grunt days. A flashback shows a younger Alf doing manual labor, explaining that low-level adventurers must be jacks of all trades. Rose looks surprised as he admits he never thought such skills would be useful after becoming a special class adventurer. She turns her head, looking thoughtful as she considers his past. Exhausted, the Golden Sword Saint stretches, thinking it wouldn't be right to just send her away now. He notices her quiet demeanor and asks if something is wrong. Rose looks away shyly, trying to find the words to thank him for his help. With a hint of awkwardness, she asks if he would like to stay for dinner. The Golden Sword Saint is momentarily taken aback by her unexpected invitation. Putting up a hand, he politely but firmly declines her offer for dinner. After clearing his throat, he explains he has an important message for her from the king. Rose looks annoyed by the sudden shift in topic and questions what the message is about. He reveals the news concerns the neighboring Sandra's empire, which has been making suspicious moves lately. Her expression hardens as she considers the threat posed by the powerful military empire of Sandra's. A map highlights the tense border between the superior-claiming Sandra's empire and the vigilant kingdom of Verdesia. The Golden Sword Saint reports that Sandra's reconnaissance squads have been spotted near the border, though they pose no overt threat yet. Rose dismisses the idea of war, while he relays the king's concern for her safety in the frontier region. Rose crosses her arms, looking thoughtful as she considers the situation. She confidently tells him to ask the king who he thinks she is, reasoning that a true invasion would bypass the monster-filled frontier. Her expression remains serious as she contemplates the Empire's true motives. The Golden Sword Saint seems to have an idea, mentioning the name Eldrius. The scene introduces Eldrius, the royal court's stern-looking special-class mage. In a throne room, Eldrius respectfully addresses the king of Verdesia. Rose scoffs, calling Eldrius a bastard who only performs when it truly matters. The Golden Sword Saint smirks, noting that she and Eldrius still don't get along. She tells him to pass on a message for Eldrius to work hard in her absence, to which he flippantly agrees. He gives a casual wave goodbye, leaving Rose to her thoughts on the balcony. She leans against the railing, watching him depart with a pensive look. As the caped Golden Sword Saint walks away, Rose decides she might as well make dinner. A pot of stew bubbles cheerfully over an open flame. With a bright smile, Rose decides to finish her dish with a heaping basket of red chili peppers. A juicy steak and a bowl of soup are generously topped with fiery red chili slices. Clasping her hands, Rose beams with delight, admiring her delicious-looking meal. She happily savors her spicy homemade food, reflecting that cooking has now become a hobby. A flashback shows her overworked past as a court mage, revealing she discovered the joy of extremely spicy food after starting to cook for herself. Plates of pasta and steak are shown, all covered in a generous amount of red-hot chili peppers. While eating, she jokes that her food is good enough to attract monsters and that the Golden Sword Saint is missing out. A sudden jolt of realization interrupts her meal. Having finished her dinner, she calmly wipes her mouth with a napkin. With a look of renewed annoyance, she stands and declares, "Again!" Huff! The scene shifts to a blue-haired swordsman and a pink-haired mage running for their lives. The swordsman, Phil, a Class 2 adventurer, worriedly asks his companion if she is all right. The mage, Yuna, also a Class 2 adventurer, confirms she is, as magical projectiles fly past them in the moonlit forest. Yuna warns that their pursuers are catching up, and a frustrated Phil curses their situation. Stomp. Phil abruptly stops running and plants his feet, ready to make a stand. Turning to face the threat, he grits his teeth and asks Yuna to give him a buff. Yuna agrees and casts a strength enhancement spell, enveloping Phil in a powerful golden aura. Unseen by the pair, a massive, glowing green eye watches them from the darkness of the forest. Phil steels himself, vowing to become a Class 1 adventurer. He glances back with a determined, sweat-streaked face. He declares he will achieve his dream with Yuna as they come face to face with a colossal, feathery serpent monster. Phil grunts, preparing for battle while Yuna watches with concern from behind him. The monster opens its massive fanged maw, preparing to strike them down. It lunges forward with blinding speed, and Phil lets out a terrified scream. RRGGHH. The beast's attack connects, sending the swordsman flying through the air. A fresh wound appears on the monster's side as Phil is violently thrown back. Wham! He crashes hard into the forest floor, a cloud of dirt erupting from the impact. He groans in pain, struggling to push himself up from the ground, bruised and battered. Yuna cries out his name in shock and fear. She stands alone before the massive serpent, whose eyes now glow a menacing red. Utterly terrified, she can only stammer in fear as she stares up at the beast. The monster's enormous fangs descend upon the helpless mage. A pair of familiar platform boots steps firmly onto the grassy battlefield. A massive wave of fire erupts, completely engulfing the serpent just as it's about to strike Yuna. Rose's hand erupts in a torrent of flames, her power unleashed. Wreathed in flames, the red-haired Rose smirks, declaring that she's getting pissed off. Yuna anxiously checks on the injured Phil, who can only groan in pain as he looks up, disoriented. Standing confidently with embers floating around her, Rose assesses the situation. Rose stands calmly before the smoldering, colossal head of the defeated feathery serpent. Noticing a gash on the beast, Rose silently wonders who inflicted the wound on the monster. Phil confirms he wounded the beast, earning a thoughtful smirk from Rose as she considers his strength. Towering over the adventurers, the colossal serpent's body dominates the scene as Rose contemplates the creature. The dead serpent's head is shown up close, its massive fangs and open maw a testament to its ferocity. Tisk! Rose looks on with a slightly annoyed yet contemplative expression. Closing her eyes, Rose gathers her energy, enveloping herself in a brilliant aura as she casts Magic Boost. The serpent's tail suddenly whips towards them, and a terrified Phil yells for Yuna to watch out. Rose blurs into action, launching a powerful, eye-shaped fire projectile at incredible speed. Her body glowing with power, Rose braces herself to intercept the monster's massive tail with her bare hands. She effortlessly blocks the colossal tail, the impact sending shockwaves as she holds her ground. Phil and Yuna stare in utter disbelief, amazed that she flew just by using a simple magic boost. Surrounded by a swirling, magical aura, Rose hovers effortlessly in the air, a picture of immense power. A small flame sparks at her fingertip as she begins to cast her next spell, Einsbloom. She unleashes the devastating Red Lotus spell, engulfing the serpent in a pillar of raging fire. The monster's form is consumed by the roaring flames of her attack as she calmly watches. She gathers fire into her hand once more, preparing her final move, Spy Bloom, Blazing Blade. Her eyes gleam with power as she materializes a magnificent, towering blade made of pure fire. The flaming sword transforms into a dragon of fire, lunging forward as she swings it down with immense force. Wham! Her fiery attack strikes its target with devastating force. The serpent's head is completely obliterated by the overwhelming power of the fiery dragon strike. Her boot touches the ground amidst the dying embers, the battle now clearly over. Phil and Yuna are left utterly speechless, their faces a mask of pure shock and awe. Wiping her brow, Rose compliments their work but then pauses, her expression changing as she takes a closer look. She stands over the two exhausted adventurers, silently observing them after the intense battle. She holds out a sparkling green potion, offering it to the wounded adventurers. Startled by her offer, Phil and Yuna look at the potion with wide, uncertain eyes. Yuna politely refuses the expensive potion, but Rose seems confused by her reasoning. She reveals she made the potion herself with free ingredients, shocking Phil as she urges a hesitant Yuna to drink it. Yuna remains speechless, her wide eyes fixed on the mysterious potion in her hands. Whoa! After drinking the potion, Phil is enveloped in a healing aura, his injuries vanishing instantly. Fully healed and amazed, Phil approaches Rose to express his gratitude. Seeing their predicament, Rose offers to let them rest at her place for the night. Phil asks who she is, and a flustered Rose struggles to explain her unemployed status in this dangerous region. The two adventurers stare blankly as Rose turns away, seemingly lost in thought. She turns back with a smirk and introduces herself as Rose, the witch of this frontier. An awkward silence falls as both the adventurers and a suddenly self-conscious Rose process her dramatic introduction. Overcome with embarrassment, Rose yells for them to forget it and just follow her, leaving Phil to wonder if she's really a witch. Safely inside, a clean and rested Phil sits up, his hair appearing gray-blue in the warm light. Yuna sits comfortably in a chair, taking in their cozy new surroundings with a look of relief. Noticing Yuna's thoughtful gaze, Rose sits across from her and bluntly asks what she's thinking about. Yuna's eyes light up with starstruck realization as she connects the dots. Rose is momentarily stunned by Yuna's sudden, energetic outburst. Rose confirms she was a special class adventurer, and an ecstatic Yuna exclaims that she knew it. Phil's eyes widen as he finally recognizes her full name, Rose Freeman. In a happy memory, a laughing Rose playfully punches a blonde-haired friend, telling them not to call her by that name. A young woman with pinkish-brown hair bows deeply to Rose, excitedly asking to shake the hand of someone she's long admired. The starstruck woman beams, her eyes sparkling with pure adoration for the legendary Mage before her. Now seated, Rose asks the young woman and her blue-haired male companion what brought them to the dangerous frontier. The two young adventurers look on with serious expressions, preparing to share their story. Rose correctly deduces they need a Class 1 monster part to rank up, and the young man confirms that's where their plans went wrong. The young woman explains that they train diligently in both swordsmanship and mana control, insisting they aren't slacking off. As an image of them training appears, she admits that despite their hard work, they feel they are missing a crucial element. Listening to their plea, Rose gets a bad feeling, sensing an inevitable and burdensome request is coming. The blue-haired young man and his pink-haired companion sit nervously, their faces a mixture of hope and anxiety. Rose remains silent, her expression unreadable, as she waits for them to state their purpose. The pair continue to wait in tense silence, a bead of sweat running down the young man's face. Before they can even make their request, Rose cuts them off with a blunt and decisive refusal. Dejected, the young woman apologizes for their presumption as she and her companion look away in disappointment. The blue-haired young man speaks up, calling out to her directly by name, Rose. He leans forward, earnestly pleading with her to at least offer them some advice. Rose looks down at the desperate young man, appearing to consider his heartfelt request. Gotta! The young man abruptly drops to his knees, his sudden movement startling Rose. He passionately declares he wants the strength to protect his companion, Yuna, who cries out his name, Phil, in shock. Rose watches Phil's display of devotion, her arms still crossed, but her stern expression wavering. A memory surfaces of a smiling, long-haired man with a purple vest, who once told someone they had potential. The memory continues, revealing the man offering a young, dirt-smudged Rose the chance to become a mage. Back in the present, a vision of her master, Eldrius, taunts her for being unable to train rookies, causing her to twitch in annoyance. Provoked by the memory, Rose relents with a sly smile, agreeing to look after them for 2 nights and 3 days. Overjoyed, Phil and Yuna exclaim in disbelief, while Rose nonchalantly adds that their deaths would simply leave a bad taste. Rose's expression turns serious again as she prepares to lay down the conditions for her training. Phil and Yuna look back at her, their expressions now sober and attentive. Now outside and in a new combat outfit, Rose cracks her knuckles, explaining she will teach them how to win with a single blow. Phil and Yuna listen from a distance, looking on with nervous anticipation. Standing before her, Phil nervously confirms that he is ready to begin his training. He closes his eyes and concentrates, managing to summon a small, flickering aura of mana around his hand. Rose explains that most people can only manage to enhance a single part of their body, like Phil is demonstrating. In a stark contrast, Rose effortlessly summons a powerful, crackling aura of pink energy around her own hand. Both Phil and Yuna watch in awe, completely captivated by her overwhelming display of mana control. She holds up her powerful aura next to Phil's weak one, rhetorically asking if he understands the difference. With a sudden clench of her fist, Rose unleashes an explosive shockwave of power, that sends her two students flying backward. Blown away by the force, a stunned Phil, his hair now partially white from the shock, asks if she used full body enhancement. Yuna marvels at the incredible mana output as Rose stands confidently, enveloped in a radiant aura. Rose begins her lesson, explaining that true power in close combat comes from the entire body, not just arm strength. She demonstrates by channeling energy through her torso, clarifying she uses her whole body to generate power for punches and kicks. Now emanating a green aura, she asks Phil if he swings his sword using only his arms. Phil clutches his sword and confirms he was taught to swing from the hips, not just his arms. Yuna expresses concern, asking if full body enhancement wouldn't dangerously split a mage's focus and awareness in a fight. Rose smirks dismissively, calling that the kind of theory only cloistered researchers with no real combat experience would believe. She lists the practical benefits of the technique: landing, finishing blows, explosive movement, and higher magic resistance. Turning back to her students, she declares that for a fighter, the technique is all upside. Rose brings her finger menacingly close to Phil's face, causing him to sweat nervously. With a wicked grin, she announces that to teach him, she's going to throw him into a little crisis. Wah! She instantly engulfs Phil in a raging inferno, prompting Yuna to scream his name in terror. Horrified, Yuna turns on Rose, demanding to know what she has done to Phil. As Phil struggles within the flames, a fiery, wolf-like beast lunges at him, the crisis Rose promised. Rose looks on with a calm, knowing smile, her red hair tied in twin buns. A new training begins as Rose asks a kneeling Phil how he'll escape the pain of the flames she's surrounded him with. Watching with concern, Yuna has a sudden realization about the purpose of this harsh test. Gritting his teeth, Phil activates his full-body magic enhancement, enveloping himself in a protective green aura as Rose watches approvingly. As Phil endures the flames, Yuna understands he's using mana enhancement to build resistance and reduce damage, realizing this is the core of the training. That's the spirit, Rose says, clapping enthusiastically as she watches Phil's determined struggle against the fire. Please let me do it, Phil pleads, his resolve hardening amidst the flames, and Rose grants him permission to proceed. Rose reminds a recovering Phil not to push himself too hard as he prepares to continue the trial. With a serious expression, Rose quietly accepts his decision to continue. Turning her attention to Yuna, Rose announces that her lesson is about to begin. Rose demonstrates her incredible control by conjuring a small, steady flame on the tip of her index finger. A promotional page for the Scanlation group is displayed between scenes. The name of a spell, Einsbloom, appears over a swirling vortex of fire as Rose prepares to cast. Yuna watches in awe as Rose unleashes her signature Red Lotus magic, recognizing it as the legendary Flame Blossom. Startled, Yuna turns as Rose suddenly appears right beside her. Rose gives her an encouraging smile and tells her to give the spell a try. As Yuna manifests a blade of fire on her staff, Rose explains her magic concentrates heat rather than just gathering flames. The flame on Yuna's staff flickers and dies out instantly, much to her surprise, while Rose observes thoughtfully. Using a small flame on her own finger, Rose advises Yuna to visualize a campfire to maintain the spell. Demonstrating with her own hands, Rose instructs Yuna to picture the outer flame and then gather its hottest part into a form. Yuna focuses, murmuring the instructions to herself as she prepares to try again. "I'll give it a try," Yuna declares, gripping her staff as Rose watches with a confident posture. Yuna struggles, realizing she needs a stronger mental image to condense the heat, while Rose watches with a knowing smirk. Elsewhere, Phil pants heavily as he continues his own training, running through the forest while engulfed in a fiery aura. "This is brutal," Phil cries out, realizing the pain immobilizes him without his magic enhancement, as his feet are scorched. With a gasp of pain, Phil's concentration wavers as he touches the intense flames surrounding him. He stumbles and falls forward, losing his balance in the fiery trial. An explosion of fire erupts as Phil hits the ground. "Ard!" Phil screams in pain, shocked to find his magic enhancement has suddenly stopped. The protective aura vanishes, leaving him vulnerable and confused. Lying on the ground, he looks at his hand and wonders why the flames around him also went out. Panting and sweating, Phil deduces that the training flames are linked to his own full-body enhancement. Utterly spent, he collapses onto his back in the cool grass. Lying exhausted, Phil laments that he couldn't even make it halfway through the course. A vision of Rose's overwhelming power fighting a massive beast of fire fills his mind. Thinking he must get stronger to protect Yuna, Phil sits up with newfound determination. He clenches his fist, reigniting his mana and the fiery aura around him with sheer willpower. Back on his feet, Phil resumes his fiery run through the forest as Rose watches from afar. Floating in the air, Rose observes her students' progress with a slight, proud smile. The grueling training session ends with both Phil and Yuna completely drained and slumped over. Peeking into the room, Rose cheerfully congratulates them on a good job and asks if they have any questions. Phil requests to raise the training's intensity, prompting Rose to ask if he can handle it. With a determined gaze, Phil insists that pushing himself to the brink of death is exactly what he needs to grow stronger. Wearing a new orange apron, Rose smirks and accepts his request. Yuna agrees, stating she also wants to continue as she feels close to a breakthrough. Pleased, Rose agrees, but Yuna hesitantly asks about her new apron. Rose stands silently, wearing her combat gear under an orange cooking apron decorated with a single red chili pepper. Closing her eyes, Rose smiles with a sense of quiet satisfaction. Phil and Yuna appear refreshed and happy, smiling brightly together. The reward for the hard day's training is a delicious-looking meal of 2 large steaks. A steaming bowl of dangerously red soup is served alongside fresh bread. Rose gestures to the table, telling a hesitant Phil and Yuna to sit down for dinner. The 2 adventurers stare in horror at their spicy meal as Rose calmly pours them water. Phil's instincts scream that the food is dangerous, while Yuna wonders if this is some kind of internal strengthening training. With a bright, sparkling smile, Rose cheerfully encourages her terrified guests to eat up. Phil and Yuna exchange worried glances, completely unnerved by the meal before them. After one bite, Phil is overwhelmed, thinking the brutal pain and spice are beyond anything he's ever experienced. Phil realizes he can use magic to reinforce his organs and begins to eat through the pain as Yuna watches, newly resolved to fight by his side. Yuna takes a bite and is metaphorically engulfed in flames, feeling as though magma is pouring down her throat. Closing her eyes against the pain, Yuna convinces herself this is mental training to help her visualize magic more clearly. With expressions of pure agony, both Phil and Yuna continue to force down the brutally spicy food. Rose smiles, pleased that they like her food, and decides to put her all into tomorrow's meal as well. Later in a bath, Rose offers to wash a flustered Yuna's back, who feels it's too great of an honor. Splash! Rose tells a startled Yuna not to hold back, insisting this is also part of her training. Wrapped in a towel, Rose kneels by the bath with a warm and inviting smile. Rose begins her lesson, explaining to Yuna that she'll demonstrate how heat control works. Yuna watches intently from the edge of the tub as Rose prepares the demonstration. As she enters the water, Yuna is stunned to find that it isn't hot at all. Rose explains that heat control is similar to her Flame Blossom spell, and Yuna agrees to try and learn it. Before the training begins, Rose suggests they wash up first. As Yuna washes her hair, she tells Rose she feels bad making her do this, but Rose brushes off her concerns. Yuna expresses her deep admiration for Rose Fryman, the legendary Crimson Gardener. Rose listens to the praise with a quiet, thoughtful expression. Rose lightly pats Yuna's back, telling the skinny girl to eat more meat and explaining the importance of close combat skills for a mage. Rose confirms she forced herself to train in close combat because some people just aren't naturally cut out for it. Yuna asks why, prompting a flashback of Rose being pinned by her master. She wanted to beat him, but was always defeated by a single punch. In a memory, a younger Rose relentlessly challenges her master in hand-to-hand combat, getting beaten every time. Rose admits with frustration that despite her training, she still can't match true close combat specialists. Yuna looks down, humbled, admitting that she leaves all the frontline fighting to Phil. While Yuna scrubs her back, Rose compliments her talent for reaching her rank in only 2 years. Yuna asks about Rose's past, and Rose casually confirms she was a court mage at 10 and special class by 14, because she's a genius. Noticing Yuna has gone quiet, Rose turns and calls her name. The two sit in silence for a moment, back to back on their stools. Yuna thinks of Phil's brave nature and strengthens her resolve to become strong enough to always stand by his side. Yuna's expression hardens with newfound determination. Rose glances over her shoulder at Yuna, a sly, knowing smile forming on her face. Leaning in close, Rose catches Yuna completely off guard by asking if she likes Phil. Blushing deeply, Yuna shyly admits that might be the case, as Rose smiles warmly. The two share a peaceful moment as Yuna gently rinses Rose's back. Yuna asks if Rose has a special someone, but Rose says no, recalling the Golden Sword Saint's flashy advances. Yuna assumes court mages are too busy for romance, but Rose reveals she quit because she was sick of the work. Yuna pauses her washing, her hair covered in a mountain of soap suds. She worries aloud, thinking she's never heard of a court mage quitting and wondering if the country fell into chaos. Rose turns around and playfully offers to write Yuna a recommendation for the now vacant position. A panicked Yuna waves her hands dismissively, refusing the offer while Rose teases that she'd be good at it. The next day, Rose leads Phil and Yuna on a walk through a lush green forest. Phil questions if jumping straight into real combat is wise, but Rose insists that it's the only way to make the training meaningful. With renewed determination, Phil vows to defeat a Class 1 monster and earn his promotion. Rose smiles, revealing she anticipated his resolve and has already prepared something for them. The trio stares at a massive, writhing pile of purple serpents trapped within a crackling cage of fire. Phil identifies the new, menacing purple serpent as a thousand serpent, but Rose casually reveals she caught it that morning. Rose smirks, proposing a rematch, and though nervous, Phil accepts the challenge for himself and Yuna. From a distance, Rose watches as Phil and Yuna prepare to face the serpent, which is trapped inside her fiery dome. His initial shock turning to fierce resolve, Phil confidently accepts the daunting trial ahead. As Rose begins her countdown, she releases the fire cage, unleashing the enraged serpent upon the two adventurers. The serpent attacks instantly with a powerful tail whip, causing Phil to shout in alarm and Yuna to scream. Arms crossed, Rose watches the chaos unfold with a confident and slightly amused smile. As the massive serpent looms over them, Rose warns Phil and Yuna to try their best not to get torn apart. The enraged purple serpent thrashes violently, its glowing red eyes fixed on its prey. Preparing for battle, Phil activates his full-body mana enhancement, surrounding himself in a vibrant teal aura. Phil courageously taunts the beast, drawing its attention as it turns to face him. Glowing with power, he charges headfirst towards the colossal monster. With surprising agility, Phil narrowly dodges the serpent's sweeping tail attack. Gritting his teeth, Phil realizes he can clearly see the monster's movements as Yuna begins to focus her own magic. A sudden burst of flame erupts from the end of Yuna's staff. Yuna scatters small orbs of fire around herself in a defensive formation, a tactic Rose finds interesting. Phil is momentarily caught off guard, but manages to dodge another powerful swipe from the serpent's tail. Sizzle. He slides under the attack, slashing his sword against the creature's tough, scaly hide. Landing gracefully, Phil crouches low, ready to continue his assault. He leaps onto the serpent's back, striking it with all his might. Watching from the sidelines, Rose enthusiastically praises Phil's impressive attack. Rose claps, explaining that the serpent's tough outer skin can't be pierced by half-hearted attacks. Phil stands his ground, his mana-enhanced sword at the ready, while Yuna watches him intently. Recalling their bath, Yuna deduces Rose's heat control technique, realizing she can't replicate it internally just yet. With newfound determination, Yuna decides to gather heat externally, raising her staff as flames erupt around her. She channels a massive vortex of fire, unleashing her sprouting fire spell. Her powerful red sprout attack engulfs the massive serpent in a column of intense flame. The serpent's form is consumed by the roaring inferno Yuna created. Seizing the opportunity, Yuna calls out to Phil, who readies himself for a follow-up strike. With the serpent weakened, Phil prepares to deliver the finishing blow. He leaps atop the burning monster, plunging his magically infused sword deep into its flesh. His powerful strike cleaves the monster in two, sending a shower of blood into the air. Yuna pants heavily, exhausted but relieved after unleashing her powerful spell. Phil also catches his breath, the intense battle having taken its toll. The adventurers stand victorious over the severed pieces of the defeated thousand serpent. The serpent's dismembered head twitches violently on the grass. A sudden beam of light from the sky pierces the serpent's head, finishing it for good. Phil looks down at his sword, seemingly unaware of where the final light beam came from. We did it. Yuna cheers, throwing her arms around a blushing Phil in a joyful hug. Phil closes his eyes and smiles, warmly returning the hug as he thanks Yuna for her help. Rose lands nearby, cheerfully congratulating them on their excellent teamwork. Still embracing, Phil and Yuna turn to their mentor with proud smiles. With a smirk, Rose swiftly bonks both of them on the head with Yuna's staff. A flustered Phil and Yuna thank Rose for the training, but she suddenly senses something is wrong. Phil collapses from exhaustion, admitting he let his guard down, as Rose praises his improved mana proficiency. Rose then turns to Yuna, complimenting her for her ingenious and unconventional use of external heat sources for her magic. Yuna shyly admits her technique is still unrefined, requiring more mana and preparation time than Rose's. Rose reassures her, explaining that she is now the only other mage besides herself who can use Flame Blossom. Placing a supportive hand on Yuna's shoulder, Rose tells her to be proud of her accomplishment. Touched by the praise from her idol, a tearful Yuna gratefully accepts the compliment. Rose waves goodbye, reminding Phil and Yuna to collect the monster parts for proof as she departs. Yuna tearfully thanks her, while Phil clenches his fist, vowing they will meet again as Class 1 adventurers. A narrator confirms that Phil and Yuna successfully received their Class 1 adventurer licenses by presenting the Monster Claws. Now clad in new, more formidable gear, the two adventurers stand together, looking towards a bright new beginning.